7 things you must stop overthinking. Buddhist teachings explained. The human mind is a wondrous tool, capable of imagination, reflection, and profound insight. Yet the same mind, when left untrained, can become a cage. Overthinking is one of the greatest mental traps we fall into. It steals our peace, blurs our clarity, and distances us from the present moment. Buddhism, through its timeless wisdom, teaches that the mind is not our enemy, but our companion. However, when it dominates us with fear, doubt, and endless mental chatter, we lose touch with life as it truly unfolds. In a world driven by uncertainty and speed, we have normalized overthinking. We analyze every action, doubt every emotion, and question every path. But in doing so, we forget the essence of awareness, the calm presence that observes without judgment. The Buddha's teachings remind us that liberation does not come from controlling life's circumstances, but from understanding the nature of the mind itself. In this reflection, we will explore 7 fundamental things you must stop overthinking, 7 illusions that keep you trapped in cycles of worry and confusion. Each lesson will draw from Buddhist insight, offering a way to transform thought into awareness, confusion into clarity, and fear into acceptance. Let us begin by understanding the first and most common subject of overthinking, the past. Stop overthinking the past. The chains of yesterday. The mind is a storyteller, and its favorite story is the one already told. We replay memories, reanalyze choices, and rehearse conversations that ended long ago. We ask ourselves, what if I had acted differently? What if I hadn't said that? What if I had chosen another path? But the truth, as Buddhism reminds us, is simple. What has passed is beyond your control, and no amount of mental revisiting can alter its essence. In the Dhammapada, it is said, "Do not dwell in the past. Do not dream of the future. Concentrate the mind on the present moment. The past is not a place we can live in. It is a shadow that follows us, gaining life only when we turn our attention toward it. Yet, many people live their entire existence imprisoned by their own recollections. Overthinking the past arises from attachment, a deep desire for things to have been different. It stems from the illusion of control, from the belief that if we mentally revisit events enough, we can somehow change their outcome or lessen their impact. But the Buddha's insight reveals that this attachment brings only suffering, dukkha. The more we resist what happened, the tighter the chain becomes. To free yourself, you must learn to see the past as a teacher, not a tyrant. Every experience, no matter how painful, contains a seed of wisdom. When you contemplate a past mistake, don't ask, "Why did this happen to me?" Instead, ask, "What has this taught me about impermanence, compassion, or detachment?" This shift transforms mental rumination into spiritual understanding. Imagine your thoughts as leaves carried by a river. The more you try to hold them, the more they crumble in your hands. But if you let them flow, you see that they move naturally toward the ocean of awareness. Mindfulness practice invites us to observe thoughts without grasping them, to witness the past without becoming entangled in it. Letting go of the past is not forgetting, it is forgiving. Forgiveness, in the Buddhist sense, does not mean erasing memory, but releasing the emotional charge that binds you to it. It is the act of saying, "This too was part of my path." Through this acceptance, your heart finds rest, and your mind discovers stillness. Meditation helps in this transformation. Sit quietly and allow memories to surface. Do not analyze them, do not reject them, simply breathe and watch. Eventually, the mind realizes that no thought has power unless you grant it attention. The Buddha compared the mind to a flame. If it lacks fuel, it extinguishes. Overthinking the past is like continuously feeding the fire with regret and guilt. The practice of awareness removes the fuel, allowing the flame to naturally fade. In this space, peace arises, not as an idea, but as a living experience. You must understand that life unfolds only now. The past, however vividly remembered, is only an echo in the mind. When you stop chasing that echo, you begin to hear the silence beneath it, the silence of the present. So, when the mind tempts you to revisit an old wound, pause. Ask yourself, is this thought leading me to liberation or to suffering? That single question can free you from countless cycles of mental imprisonment. Remember, healing does not mean changing the past. It means changing your relationship with it. When you stop overthinking what has already been lived, you reclaim your energy for what is yet to be created. If this truth resonates with you, take a deep breath, be present in this very moment, and allow peace to enter. And before we continue to the next insight, remember to subscribe to the channel so you can keep walking with us through the path of awareness and Buddhist wisdom. Stop overthinking the future. The illusion of control. The human mind is always reaching forward. Even as we sit in this very moment, there is a subtle movement within, an almost imperceptible leaning toward what might come next. We plan, we anticipate, we fear, and we hope. The future becomes the horizon on which our entire sense of security depends. Yet Buddhism teaches that this horizon is a mirage. The more we chase it, the further it drifts away. Overthinking the future is one of the most subtle and powerful forms of suffering, for it disguises itself as responsibility, as caution, as the desire to be prepared. But beneath all that apparent wisdom lies fear, the fear of not being in control. The Buddha's path begins with a profound understanding. All things are impermanent, and nothing belongs to us, not even the next breath. This realization may sound unsettling at first, even frightening, but it is also the key to freedom. When we see the transient nature of everything that exists, we begin to understand that control is an illusion, a mental construct born out of insecurity. The ego clings to the idea of control because it believes that without it, we would be lost. But Buddhism shows us that it is in surrendering this illusion that we truly find peace. When you overthink the future, you are essentially attempting to live in a place that doesn't exist. You are projecting your mind into an imagined reality, trying to solve problems that have not yet occurred, trying to prevent pain that might never come, and trying to ensure outcomes that you cannot dictate. This mental effort drains your energy, dulls your intuition, and blinds you to the only time in which you can act, the present. The present is the only reality in which transformation can occur, but the mind prefers the fantasy of the future because it believes that peace lies somewhere ahead. The Buddha called this the trap of becoming, the endless pursuit of a better moment, a better self, a better condition that never truly arrives. Every time you tell yourself, "I will be happy when," you step into the illusion of control. The mind convinces you that happiness depends on a condition that has yet to unfold, and so it keeps you running endlessly, never allowing you to rest in the simplicity of now. But life is not waiting for your plans to align. It is unfolding here, in every inhalation and exhalation, in every sound, in every fleeting sensation that arises and passes. The more you try to control what has not yet come, the more you separate yourself from what is already here. Overthinking the future often arises from two main forces, fear and desire. Fear says, "What if something goes wrong?" Desire says, "What if I don't get what I want?" Both are rooted in attachment. Buddhism teaches that suffering arises not from what happens to us, but from our attachment to what we think should happen. We believe that if we can foresee every possibility, we can avoid suffering. Yet the act of constant anticipation is itself suffering. When you live in fear of tomorrow, You live in conflict with today. There is a story from the Buddhist tradition that illustrates this beautifully. A monk once asked the Buddha, "What is the secret to peace?" And the Buddha replied, "Do not chase the past, do not seek the future, see the world as it is in front of you." The monk pressed further, "But how can I prepare for what will come?" The Buddha smiled gently and said, "The one who is awake does not prepare. He is simply ready." The difference between preparation and overthinking lies in presence. Preparation is rooted in mindfulness. Overthinking is rooted in fear. The mindful person acts when action is needed and rests when rest is needed. The overthinker cannot rest, because even in stillness, his mind is racing toward what has not yet occurred. To stop overthinking the future, you must first recognize how much of your mental energy is consumed by stories that have not yet taken form. The human imagination is powerful. It can create entire worlds in the mind. But this gift becomes a curse when it is used to construct fear-based fantasies. Think of how many nights you have spent awake, worrying about outcomes that never materialized. Think of how many opportunities you have missed because your mind was trapped in anxiety about what could happen. The irony is that by worrying about the future, we often create the very suffering we fear. The energy of fear shapes our perception, influencing our choices and behavior in subtle ways that bring about the conditions we wanted to avoid. Mindfulness practice trains us to observe this process with detachment. When the mind begins to project into the future, we simply notice. Planning mind has arisen. We don't fight it, we don't suppress it, we just see it. Awareness alone begins to loosen the grip. The moment you notice that you are lost in thought, you are no longer lost. You have become the witness. This witnessing is the essence of Buddhist meditation. The future loses its power over you because you stop identifying with the thoughts that create it. The Buddha taught that all phenomena are conditioned. They arise and pass away according to causes and conditions. The future, therefore, is not something fixed or fated. It is a continuation of present causes. When your present mind is clear, calm, and rooted in compassion, the future naturally unfolds in harmony. But when your present mind is clouded by fear and desire, you create suffering that ripples forward. This understanding transforms the way we think about control. You cannot control the future, but you can influence it through the quality of your consciousness now. Letting go of overthinking the future does not mean neglecting your responsibilities or abandoning your goals. It means acting from clarity instead of anxiety. A Buddhist teaching says, "The wise make effort, but they do not worry." This means that you can take all necessary actions with awareness, yet remain unattached to the outcome. When you release attachment, you act freely, and your actions become expressions of wisdom rather than desperation. The anxious mind acts to escape discomfort. The aware mind acts to participate in the flow of life. Imagine standing on the shore of a river. The current represents time, always moving forward. Overthinking is like trying to grab the water and stop it from flowing, while mindfulness is like stepping into the river and moving with it. When you accept that you are part of the movement, not its master, you experience peace, even amid uncertainty. The universe has always been in motion, and your life is one expression of that motion. No matter how much you think about it, you cannot stop the tide, but you can learn to float. Fear of the future often masks a lack of trust, not only in life but in oneself. We overthink because we do not believe that we can handle what is to come. We create mental rehearsals, trying to prepare for every possible scenario. But the truth is, the mind cannot prepare for life. It can only react to it. What prepares you for life is presence, not prediction. When you are present, you respond intuitively, guided by awareness rather than worry. This is what the Buddha meant when he spoke of right understanding, the ability to see things as they are without the distortions of fear or desire. If you observe nature, you'll see that everything unfolds effortlessly. The sun rises without hesitation. The tree grows without planning. The bird does not overthink where its next meal will come from. It simply acts when the moment calls for it. Humans, however, with their complex minds, have lost this natural trust. We imagine that by thinking more, we can secure safety. But safety is not found in certainty. It is found in acceptance. The enlightened mind is not the one that knows what will happen. It's the one that knows that whatever happens will be met with awareness. Meditation is the bridge between fear and trust. When you sit and observe your breath, you learn to return again and again to the present moment. Each inhalation teaches you impermanence. Each exhalation teaches you release. The future ceases to be a looming threat and becomes simply another unfolding of now. You begin to see that life has never failed to continue, that the same force breathing you in this moment will breathe you through every future moment as well. The key is to release the false belief that peace depends on the future being a certain way. You will never think your way into peace. You can only surrender into it. When the mind says, "I need to know what's going to happen," respond gently, "You don't need to know, you need to be." This shift dismantles the foundation of overthinking. It is not an intellectual change, but a spiritual one. It is the understanding that life does not require your control to unfold perfectly. Many people ask, "But if I don't think about the future, how will I succeed?" The Buddhist answer is simple. Success is not the result of excessive thinking, but of clear seeing. When the mind is quiet, wisdom arises naturally. You will know what to do because your action will come from harmony, not from fear. Overthinking clouds intuition. It fills the space where natural knowing would emerge. The less you think compulsively, the more you understand intuitively. Consider the example of a musician. If they think too much while playing, they lose the rhythm. The true artist allows the music to flow through them. The same applies to life. Overthinking is like forcing the melody. Awareness is like becoming the melody. When you stop trying to control the song of life, you begin to dance with it. To stop overthinking the future, cultivate 3 practices: mindful presence, trust, and non-attachment. Mindful presence means being fully aware of what is happening now. Trust means believing that life supports you even when you cannot see how. Non-attachment means doing your part without clinging to the outcome. Together, these dissolve the anxiety that fuels overthinking. Every time you catch yourself imagining a future disaster or constructing endless what-if scenarios, bring your attention to your breath. Feel its simplicity. Feel how, in this single moment, nothing is missing. This practice retrains the mind to dwell in what is real. The future is merely an echo of your current state of being. When your present is calm, your future reflects that calmness. There is a profound teaching in Zen Buddhism that says the next moment is born from this one. This means that your relationship with the future is determined by your awareness now. If you are tense, you create a tense path. If you are at peace, peace becomes your way. Therefore, stopping overthinking the future is not a passive act. It is the most active choice you can make because it directs your consciousness back to where power truly resides, the present. Ultimately, to stop overthinking the future is to accept your own smallness and the vastness of existence. It is to bow before the mystery of life and say, "I do not know," and that is enough. In that humility, peace is born. The heart opens when it no longer demands certainty. You begin to live not as a planner of possibilities, but as a witness of the miraculous unfolding of now. The future is not your enemy. Your mind's obsession with controlling it is. When you realize that the same intelligence that makes flowers bloom and stars burn is guiding your life, fear dissolves naturally. You become like the lotus, rooted in the mud of uncertainty, yet blooming in complete trust. And as you take this understanding with you, remember, every thought about tomorrow steals presence from today. Bring your awareness back again and again to this breath, this heartbeat, this instant. The mind will resist. That is its nature. But you are not the mind. You are the awareness that sees it. When you live from that awareness, the future loses its grip and the present becomes your home. If this teaching has spoken to your heart and helped you find even a glimpse of calm amid uncertainty, take a moment now to pause, breathe, and be grateful for this awareness. And before we continue to the next reflection, remember to subscribe to the channel so that you can continue this journey through the profound teachings of Buddhism and learn how to live with clarity, stillness, and compassion in every moment. Stop overthinking. What others think of you. The prison of perception. Among all the forms of overthinking, none binds the human spirit more tightly than the obsession with the opinions of others. It is an invisible prison, built not with walls of stone, but with the fragile threads of perception. We spend much of our lives trying to appear a certain way, trying to be understood, admired, or accepted. Yet the more we chase approval, the further we drift from authenticity. Buddhism calls this the suffering of craving for validation, a subtle attachment that traps the soul in a cycle of comparison, self-doubt, and illusion. The mind becomes entangled not in what is real, but in how it appears to others. We live not to be, but to seem, and in this constant self-surveillance, peace becomes impossible. When the Buddha taught about liberation, he was not merely referring to escape from external suffering. He was speaking of the inner liberation from the opinions, judgments, and expectations that dominate the unawakened mind. To overthink what others think is to give away the keys to your own freedom. It is to allow the ever-changing winds of social perception to dictate your sense of worth. Yet those winds have no substance. They change direction constantly. What pleases one person today offends another tomorrow. The wise see that human approval is as unstable as the reflection on a rippling pond. To build your identity upon it is to build on water. We fear the disapproval of others because we secretly equate it with rejection from existence itself. On a primitive level, humans once depended on their tribes for survival. So being cast out was synonymous with death. But in the spiritual sense, this fear persists long after its purpose has faded. The modern mind still believes that to be disliked is to be unsafe, and so it constructs a false self, a mask polished and adjusted daily to meet expectations. We overthink every word, every gesture, replaying interactions in the theater of the mind. Did I say too much? Did I sound foolish? What will they think of me now? These questions drain our energy and distort our perception of reality. The Buddha said, "He who is free from praise and blame, from gain and loss, from fame and disrepute, that one walks the path of peace." This teaching is profound because it reveals that peace does not come from controlling the thoughts of others, but from seeing that they are not truly about you. Every judgment reflects the mind of the one who judges. When someone praises you, they see a reflection of their own ideals. When someone criticizes you, they project their own pain and fear. The awakened person sees both praise and blame as echoes, sounds that arise and fade without altering the essence of who they are. To overthink others' opinions is to misunderstand the nature of the self. Buddhism teaches that there is no fixed self to defend or promote. What we call I is a collection of thoughts, sensations, and experiences in constant flux. If there is no solid I, Then what exactly are we trying to protect from the opinions of others? The ego, that mental construction of identity, thrives on approval because it depends on differentiation. It needs to feel superior, admired, right, or justified. When it receives praise, it expands. When it faces criticism, it contracts. Both are illusions. The middle path, the path of freedom, lies in seeing through this game entirely. The craving for validation often begins early in life. We are taught, explicitly or not, that our worth depends on performance, on being good, smart, attractive, or successful. Praise becomes a currency, and we learn to chase it at all costs. By adulthood, the pattern is deeply ingrained. We check our phones for likes, our conversations for approval, our choices for permission. Even our acts of kindness can become subtle bids for affirmation. Buddhism calls this upadana, clinging, the attempt to hold on to impermanent things for a sense of stability. But the approval of others is the most impermanent of all. You can please someone today and disappoint them tomorrow without changing who you are. To free yourself, you must begin by observing how often your thoughts revolve around others' perceptions. Pay attention to the small, constant calculations your mind makes. What to say, how to look, how to be perceived. Notice how exhausting it is. Then ask yourself, who is the one seeking approval? Who is the one fearing rejection? When you look deeply, you see that this seeker is not a solid entity, but a thought pattern, a mental habit repeating itself out of fear. The moment you see it clearly, it loses its power. Awareness dissolves illusion, just as sunlight melts mist. Meditation offers a profound way to dismantle this habit. When you sit in silence, your mind begins to show its restlessness. It produces thoughts like, "Am I doing this right?" Or, "I should look more peaceful." Even in solitude, the mind seeks an audience. The Buddhist practice of vipassana, or insight meditation, teaches you to observe these tendencies without acting on them. Each time the thought of others arises, you note it gently, worrying about perception. You neither follow it nor reject it. Gradually, a distance appears between the observer and the thought. That distance is freedom. In this freedom, you begin to realize something transformative. No one's opinion can touch your true being. The essence of who you are, the pure awareness that witnesses every thought, is untouched by praise or blame. It is the same awareness that the Buddha pointed to when he said, "Within this very body, mortal though it be, is the world's arising and the world's passing away." When you rest in awareness rather than identity, others' opinions lose their hold. They become like echoes in a vast, empty hall, heard, but without consequence. Still, the ego resists this truth. It whispers, "But I must care what others think. How else will I succeed, belong, or be loved?" Buddhism does not ask you to become indifferent or isolated. It asks you to act from authenticity, not fear. When your actions come from compassion and wisdom, they naturally benefit others, even if not everyone approves. A person rooted in awareness does not need external validation because their actions are guided by inner clarity. Ironically, such people often inspire the greatest respect, not because they chase approval, but because they embody integrity. The fear of others' judgment often hides a deeper fear, the fear of our own imperfection. We imagine that if others saw our flaws, they would reject us. But Buddhism invites us to see imperfection itself as the path. The lotus blooms from the mud. Without the mud, there is no flower. Similarly, our mistakes and vulnerabilities are the soil of growth. When you stop overthinking how others see you, you create space to meet yourself honestly. Self-acceptance blossoms in the absence of performance. One of the most liberating insights of the Buddha is that everything others see in you, good or bad, is conditioned. People's perceptions are shaped by their upbringing, pain, and preferences. If someone praises your kindness, it is because kindness resonates with their values. If someone mocks your silence, it is because they fear what it mirrors in themselves. Understanding this, you no longer take opinions personally. You see them as weather patterns passing through the sky of consciousness, uncontrollable, transient, and irrelevant to the vastness of the sky itself. The irony of overthinking others' opinions is that it blinds you to the truth that everyone is too absorbed in their own inner struggles to think of you for long. Each person lives inside their private theater of worries and dreams. The approval you seek is fleeting because the audience is distracted. When you realize this, you begin to relax. You no longer live for applause that fades before it reaches your ears. Instead, you turn inward, seeking a quieter approval, the peace that comes from self-alignment. Buddhism teaches that all suffering arises from ignorance, avidya, the ignorance of our true nature. When you overthink what others think, you have forgotten your essence. You have mistaken the transient reflection for the eternal light. But when you awaken, even slightly, you see that awareness itself needs no validation. It simply is. It observes all without preference or fear. The more you rest in this awareness, the more naturally authentic you become. You speak when truth arises, you act when compassion calls, and you rest when peace invites you. Whether others notice or not becomes irrelevant. Imagine a monk walking through a village. Some people bow to him with reverence, others mock him as a fool, and some ignore him completely. Does his peace fluctuate? If he is truly awake, it does not, for he knows that neither praise nor insult adds or subtracts from the truth of his being. In the same way, when you live from awareness rather than identity, you become unshakable. Others' opinions may swirl around you, but your center remains unmoved. This is not apathy, it is freedom. When you no longer depend on validation, you are free to love without fear, to act without calculation, and to express yourself without constraint. Compassion becomes natural because it is no longer filtered through self-concern. You help others not to be seen as good, but because goodness flows effortlessly from a liberated heart. The less you care about appearances, the more radiant your presence becomes. Still, this path requires patience. The mind has spent years, perhaps lifetimes, building its image. It will not dissolve overnight. Each time you catch yourself wondering what someone thinks, pause. Bring your awareness back to your breath, to your body, to the simplicity of being. Ask yourself, in this moment, what is true? You will find that what is true is never someone's opinion. It is the quiet pulse of life within you. That is real. That is home. The practice of letting go of others' opinions is also the practice of compassion for yourself and for them. When you realize that others are also caught in their own overthinking, their own fear of judgment, you begin to forgive. You no longer see them as critics, but as fellow travelers lost in similar illusions. Compassion dissolves resentment. You become gentle, not because you are weak, but because you understand. Over time, you begin to experience a subtle shift. You speak more simply. You act more naturally. You no longer perform kindness. You embody it. You no longer seek to be seen. You see. This is what the Buddha meant when he said, "Better than 1,000 hollow words is one word that brings peace." When your words and actions arise from the peace of authenticity, they carry power, regardless of external reaction. To stop overthinking what others think of you, you must rediscover the joy of being no one special. In anonymity, there is freedom. The ego fears this, but the soul longs for it. When you release the need to be noticed, you return to the vast stillness from which all life arises. You realize that the only opinion that matters is not an opinion at all. It is awareness itself, silent and all-encompassing. Eventually you find that the less you think about what others think, the more connected you become. Paradoxically, when you stop trying to please everyone, your presence becomes more genuine, more healing. People sense the peace in you and are drawn to it, not because you sought their approval, but because you have transcended the need for it. True influence does not come from manipulation or performance. It comes from authenticity. The Buddha's path is not about becoming perfect in the eyes of others. It is about becoming free in your own heart. When you see that the mind's need for validation is just another form of craving, you can meet it with compassion and let it go. Slowly, like clouds drifting apart, the sky of your awareness clears. In that clarity, you rediscover what you had forgotten, that peace has never depended on anyone's opinion. So the next time you catch yourself worrying about what someone might think, remember this simple truth. No thought in another's mind can define you. You are not their perception. You are the awareness that observes even the idea of perception. When you know this, criticism loses its sting, and praise loses its grip. You walk lightly, free from the burden of impression. You begin to live the way the Buddha described, a life beyond praise and blame, a life where each moment is complete unto itself. You no longer seek to be seen, you become the seeing itself. And in that seeing, in that pure awareness untouched by judgment, the deepest peace arises. If this reflection has helped you see the illusion of seeking approval and the beauty of simply being, take a breath and rest in this quiet truth. And before we continue to the next lesson, remember to subscribe to the channel to keep walking with us through the teachings of Buddhist wisdom and the art of inner freedom. Stop overthinking your purpose. The weight of finding meaning. There is perhaps no question that haunts the modern mind more than what is my purpose. It sits quietly beneath our daily routines, whispering through our ambitions, relationships and failures. We feel it in moments of stillness, in the spaces between accomplishments, in the silent unease that arises when the world grows quiet. The human being, so intelligent and self-aware, cannot help but ask why it exists. But what begins as a search for meaning often turns into an endless labyrinth of overthinking. We analyze, compare, measure, and project. We convince ourselves that life will finally make sense once we discover that one perfect purpose. Yet Buddhism teaches that this very search, the mental grasping for meaning, is itself the source of suffering. The more desperately you chase your purpose, the further you drift from it. The Buddha's wisdom does not dismiss purpose, it redefines it. He taught that the meaning of life is not something to be found in the distance, hidden like treasure beneath the weight of years and effort. Instead, it is to be lived and realized in each present moment. Purpose is not a fixed destination, but an unfolding awareness. Overthinking your purpose is like standing in a river and asking where the water is. It is all around you, flowing through you, yet your mind's grasping blinds you to it. When we overthink our purpose, we usually do so because we believe that life must justify itself through achievement. We imagine that purpose must be grand, measurable, or unique, that it must set us apart. We want our lives to mean something in the eyes of the world. But in the Buddhist view, this craving for significance is another form of attachment. Attachment to the self-image, to identity, to permanence. The ego wants to believe that it is special, chosen, destined. But Buddhism invites us to see that true freedom lies not in being special, but in being one with all things. Consider a leaf falling from a tree. Does it question its purpose? Does it worry whether its descent is meaningful? Yet its fall nourishes the soil, which feeds the roots that will one day give birth to new leaves. Life does not struggle to justify itself, it simply is. The overthinking mind, however, cannot rest in such simplicity. It wants control, it wants certainty, it fears insignificance. But the spiritual truth is this: Meaning is not discovered through thought, but revealed through awareness. The more you think about your purpose, the more you obscure it with mental noise. The Buddha often used the metaphor of the moon reflected in water. When the surface of the water is still, the reflection is clear. But when the water is disturbed by waves, the image becomes distorted. The moon, of course, is unchanged. It is the mind's movement that alters the reflection. In the same way, your purpose is always present, but your overthinking ripples the surface of your awareness. When you quiet the mind, purpose reveals itself, not as a concept, but as an experience of alignment. This alignment arises when your actions, thoughts, and words are in harmony with the present moment. In Buddhist terms, this is known as right intention and right action. It is not about doing what the world considers important, but about living with awareness, compassion, and integrity. When you overthink your purpose, you look outward, seeking approval, recognition, or destiny. When you awaken, you look inward, seeing that your purpose has always been to awaken. The purpose of life is to be fully alive. But the mind resists this simplicity because it thrives on complexity. It wants something to solve, something to chase. The idea of already being complete terrifies it, because the ego's existence depends on the sense of lack. If you were to accept that there is nothing missing, the ego would dissolve, and so it creates an endless quest for meaning, spiritual, professional, or personal, to ensure its survival. You begin to believe that once you find your calling, achieve success, or fulfill destiny, peace will come. But the Buddha exposed this illusion through the concept of tanha, craving. The craving for purpose is still craving, and craving leads to suffering. The irony is that those who stop overthinking their purpose often end up living the most meaningful lives. They are not paralyzed by questions of destiny. They are engaged with the present. They listen deeply, act sincerely, and serve where they are. Meaning flows naturally from mindfulness. You do not have to invent your purpose. It expresses itself through the way you live. Every breath taken in awareness, every act done with compassion, every moment met with presence is purpose fulfilled. Let us imagine someone sitting under a tree, wondering what they are meant to do. The mind races with possibilities, career paths, creative projects, ways to make a difference. Each thought carries both hope and anxiety, yet the tree simply stands, rooted, silent, offering shade without question or need for validation. Its existence serves life naturally. You too serve life simply by being fully what you are. The problem arises when you believe you must become something else, something greater, before you are allowed to rest in your own existence. This illusion creates an endless tension between where you are and where you think you should be. Buddhism teaches that this gap, the space between what is and what you think should be, is the source of suffering. Overthinking your purpose widens that gap. You imagine that your life's worth depends on fulfilling a certain story, yet that story is only a thought. The truth is that your purpose is already expressing itself through your awareness, through your capacity to see, to learn, to love. The mind wants a narrative, the soul seeks experience. When you stop overthinking and start observing, you realize that meaning was never lost. It was only hidden behind the noise of thought. To live without overthinking your purpose is not to live aimlessly. It is to act from clarity rather than confusion. The Buddha emphasized right effort, the balanced energy that arises when we are neither driven by ambition nor dulled by apathy. Overthinking your purpose leads to imbalance. You either overexert yourself, trying to prove your worth, or you freeze in paralysis, afraid to make the wrong choice. But when you release the mental pressure to find purpose, effort becomes effortless. You begin to act intuitively, guided not by fear but by awareness. When your heart is calm, purpose emerges naturally as compassion. It is the desire to alleviate suffering, not only your own, but that of all beings. This universal purpose lies beneath all personal purposes. You may express it through teaching, healing, creating, parenting, or simply by being kind. But the essence remains the same. Awareness in action. Overthinking turns purpose into a concept. Awareness turns it into a living truth. One of the Buddha's most profound teachings is that life is anatta, without fixed self. This means that purpose, too, cannot be fixed. It changes as life changes. The purpose of a child is to learn. The purpose of a parent is to nurture. The purpose of an elder is to guide. None of these are permanent, yet all are sacred. When you accept impermanence, you stop clinging to the idea that purpose must be eternal or grand. You realize that the simplest acts, listening deeply, breathing consciously, walking mindfully, are expressions of your deepest calling. Overthinking your purpose often stems from comparison. You look at others and imagine that their lives are more meaningful, their paths more certain. You see the artist, the monk, the leader, and wonder, why not me? But comparison is the thief of peace. The Buddha taught that envy arises from ignorance, the ignorance of one's own path. You are not meant to repeat another's journey, you are meant to live your own. Every being's purpose is shaped by conditions unique to them: karma, circumstance, temperament, and awareness. To compare paths is like comparing rivers. They all flow toward the same ocean, but through different landscapes. The mind, however, craves certainty. It wants a final answer, a purpose it can cling to forever. But life is fluid, and clinging to any fixed definition eventually causes suffering. There may have been times when you thought you knew your purpose, only to watch it dissolve as life shifted. This dissolution is not failure, it is evolution. Each phase of your life serves a purpose, and when that purpose is complete, another arises. To overthink it is to resist the natural rhythm of transformation. The wise do not cling, they flow. Meditation reveals this truth in the most direct way. As you sit in stillness, thoughts of, "What am I meant to do?" may arise. The untrained mind follows them, analyzing, constructing plans. The awakened mind simply observes, knowing that purpose cannot be found in thought, but only in presence. When the mind quiets, a deeper knowing arises, not in words, but in peace. You begin to sense that your purpose is not something separate from your being. It is your being itself, fully alive in this moment. To stop overthinking your purpose, cultivate mindfulness in everyday life. When you wash a dish, wash it fully. When you speak, speak with presence. When you rest, rest completely. In each of these acts lies the essence of purpose, awareness meeting life as it is. The Buddha's path does not ask you to escape the world in search of meaning. It invites you to awaken to the meaning already woven through every experience. There is a teaching in Zen that says, before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. The task does not change, only the awareness does. When you overthink your purpose, you seek extraordinary meaning. When you awaken, you find extraordinary meaning in the ordinary. The act of breathing, walking, or smiling becomes a sacred expression of existence. It is not uncommon to fear that letting go of the search for purpose will lead to passivity or emptiness, but the opposite is true. When you stop overthinking, you create space for intuitive wisdom to guide you. You act not from anxiety, but from alignment. You begin to trust that life unfolds through you, not against you. Each step reveals the next. The path does not need to be seen in full, only the next step needs to be clear. In the end, the question, "What is my purpose?" dissolves into a deeper realization. There is no separate my. Life itself is the purpose, and you are an inseparable part of it. Just as a wave cannot be apart from the ocean, you cannot be apart from the unfolding of existence. Your role is not to control the tide, but to flow with it consciously. The overthinking mind wants ownership, my purpose, my destiny, my path. The awakened mind sees unity, this moment, this awareness, this being. When you finally rest in this understanding, the weight of finding meaning lifts. You no longer need to prove your worth through accomplishment. You no longer seek validation from destiny. You realize that your purpose is fulfilled each time you are fully present, each time you meet life with an open heart. This is the freedom the Buddha pointed to, the liberation from the tyranny of becoming. The path of awareness is not about reaching a grand conclusion. It is about dissolving the need for one. The more you live in the present, the more your life aligns effortlessly with what it was always meant to be. You become like the wind, moving, transforming, serving, yet belonging nowhere. You understand that meaning does not lie in what you do, but in how awake you are while doing it. So stop overthinking your purpose. Breathe deeply and see that you are already where you need to be. Your life is not waiting for permission to begin. It is happening now. The river does not wait for the sea to justify its flow. It moves because that is its nature. You too are moving, learning, awakening, returning. Let this understanding be your peace. You were never lost. You were only thinking too much about the map. When you stop searching, you realize that you are home. And if this reflection has brought you closer to that home within, where purpose is not something to be found, but something to be lived, take this moment to breathe with gratitude. And before we move to the next lesson on releasing overthinking, remember to subscribe to the channel so that you can continue walking with us through the teachings of the Buddha, learning to live not through endless thought, but through timeless awareness. Stop overthinking your emotions. The path from resistance to understanding. The mind loves to analyze, to categorize, to label every rise and fall of our inner world. When joy comes, we cling to it, afraid it will leave. When sadness arises, we resist it, trying to reason our way out of it. We create entire narratives around how we should feel and why we feel what we do. Yet this constant overthinking of emotion is the very thing that prevents us from actually experiencing it. Buddhism teaches that emotions are like clouds passing through the vast sky of awareness. They appear, they change shape, and they dissolve. But the untrained mind treats them as permanent storms, rushing to interpret, justify, and control what is, by nature, impermanent. When you overthink your emotions, you begin to confuse thought about emotion with the emotion itself. Anger is not the same as thinking, "I am angry." Sadness is not the same as replaying stories of loss. The direct experience of emotion is often raw, fleeting, and pure. But thought extends it, multiplies it, and gives it life long after it has already begun to fade. The Buddha taught that suffering is not caused by pain alone, but by our attachment to it, our mental clinging to what we like or dislike. Overthinking is one of the subtlest forms of clinging. Instead of allowing emotions to flow naturally, we hold them captive in the mind, circling endlessly around them like moths around a flame. Take, for instance, sadness. When sadness first arises, it is a natural human response to loss, disappointment, or impermanence. But the moment we begin to overthink it, we feed it with stories. Why did this happen to me? Will I ever be happy again? What could I have done differently? Each of these thoughts pulls the original feeling into a longer narrative of suffering. The sadness that was once a transient wave becomes a whirlpool that drags the mind into endless rumination. The Buddha compared such rumination to being shot with two arrows. The first arrow is the unavoidable pain of life, but the second arrow is the unnecessary suffering we create by resisting or overanalyzing that pain. To stop overthinking your emotions, you must first understand their true nature. In Buddhist psychology, emotions are seen as energies that arise in response to contact, between the senses and the world, between memory and thought, between desire and reality. They are not enemies, they are messengers. Each emotion reveals something about our attachments, our aversions, our illusions. But to receive the message, we must listen with awareness rather than react with thought. Overthinking interrupts this natural process, replacing observation with judgment. Instead of asking, "What is this feeling trying to show me?" the mind demands, "How can I get rid of this feeling?" The former opens the heart, the latter closes it. The practice of mindfulness teaches us to meet each emotion as it arises, without labeling it as good or bad. When joy comes, we enjoy it without clinging. When pain comes, we observe it without rejection. This does not mean we become indifferent or emotionless. It means we stop adding resistance. Resistance is what transforms temporary discomfort into lasting suffering. Imagine holding a rope tightly while someone pulls on the other end. The tighter you grip, the more painful it becomes. Emotions are the same. The moment you loosen your grip and allow them to move through you, they begin to release their own tension. Buddhist teachings often refer to equanimity, or upekkha, as the balance of mind that arises when one no longer identifies with emotions. Equanimity does not mean suppressing feelings. It means seeing them as waves in the ocean of awareness. The ocean does not fear its waves. It allows them to rise and fall naturally. Likewise, awareness does not fear emotion. It allows it to arise and pass without losing its depth. Overthinking your emotions, on the other hand, is like trying to stop the tide with your hands. You exhaust yourself fighting what was never meant to be controlled. One of the most profound realizations in Buddhist practice is that emotions are impermanent. No feeling, no matter how intense, lasts forever. Even grief, which can feel endless, changes its shape over time. It may return, but never in the same way. When we forget this truth, we cling to emotions as if they define us. We say, "I am angry, I am sad, I am anxious," turning temporary states into permanent identities. But the Buddha encouraged his followers to replace "I am" with "there is." Instead of "I am angry," we can say, "there is anger." Instead of "I'm afraid," we can say, "there is fear." This subtle shift breaks identification. The emotion becomes an experience, not a definition. Awareness remains untouched. Overthinking your emotions also distorts reality because thought and emotion feed each other. A single thought of fear can trigger anxiety, which in turn creates more fearful thoughts, forming a loop that seems unbreakable. But mindfulness interrupts this loop. When you observe fear without reacting, you begin to see its nature. It rises, peaks, and fades. You realize that fear itself is not as powerful as your resistance to it. The mind's stories amplify what is, in truth, a passing sensation. Buddhism invites you to sit with discomfort rather than run from it. This sitting is not passive, it is courageous. To sit with your pain without labeling it, without analyzing it, without trying to fix it, is an act of profound strength. The Buddha compared the mind to a pond. When disturbed, it becomes muddy and we cannot see the bottom. But if we stop stirring it, the sediment settles and clarity returns. Overthinking emotions is like constantly poking the water, wondering why it never clears. When you stop poking, understanding arises naturally. Many people overthink their emotions because they fear what lies beneath them. We are taught from childhood to suppress certain feelings, anger, jealousy, sadness, and to label others as positive. This conditioning leads us to distrust our emotional life. When strong feelings arise, the mind immediately intervenes, asking, "What does this mean? How do I stop it?" But emotions are not moral categories. They are movements of energy. Anger, for example, can reveal where a boundary has been crossed. Fear can show where awareness is needed. Sadness can deepen empathy. When we stop overthinking, we begin to see that every emotion contains wisdom. In the Buddhist tradition, emotions are often connected to kleshas, mental afflictions that obscure clarity, such as greed, hatred, and delusion. The goal is not to destroy them, but to transform them through awareness. When you overthink, you feed the kleshas with attention. When you observe them mindfully, they lose their grip. The fire of anger, when met with awareness, becomes the light of discernment. The fog of confusion, when held in stillness, becomes the clarity of understanding. Transformation happens not through suppression, but through seeing deeply. It is also essential to remember that emotions are not isolated, they are relational. They arise in the space between the self and the world, between expectations and reality. Overthinking your emotions often means replaying interactions, trying to assign blame or find meaning in others' behavior. But this is another form of illusion. The Buddha taught dependent origination. Everything arises because of conditions, and when those conditions change, the emotion changes too. Seeing this, we can stop personalizing our emotions. We no longer say, "This person made me angry," but rather, anger arose in response to certain conditions. This subtle insight restores freedom. It reminds us that while we cannot always control conditions, we can control our response. Meditation offers a direct way to observe emotions without analysis. When practicing mindfulness of feeling, a key aspect of the Buddha's teaching, you simply notice sensations as they arise. You might observe warmth in the chest, tightness in the throat, or heaviness in the stomach. You label it gently, pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. You do not dive into why it is there or how to change it. In this simplicity, the storm of overthinking loses its fuel. The emotion unfolds, expresses itself, and dissipates. This practice teaches you that emotions are not problems to be solved, but experiences to be witnessed. The more you practice, the less afraid you become of your inner world. You realize that emotions are waves that come and go, but awareness, the ocean beneath, remains untouched. This realization is liberation. It frees you from the tyranny of overthinking, from the endless effort to control what was never meant to be controlled. Overthinking your emotions also weakens your capacity for genuine connection. When you are lost in analysis, you are no longer present with yourself or others. You may be physically there, but mentally elsewhere, tangled in self-judgment or worry. True connection arises when you meet yourself and others without thought, when you simply feel, listen, and be. The mind wants to dissect love, to understand joy, to rationalize sorrow. But life's richest experiences cannot be understood. They can only be lived. The Buddha did not teach detachment as emotional numbness. He taught non-attachment as emotional freedom. This means feeling deeply without clinging, loving fully without possession, grieving sincerely without despair. When you overthink your emotions, you miss their essence. When you live them mindfully, they open your heart. Even pain, when met with awareness, becomes a doorway to compassion. Imagine sitting quietly as a storm passes outside. The wind howls, the rain lashes, thunder rolls, but you do not rush out to stop it. You watch, you wait, you trust that it will pass. Your emotions are the same. They may roar and crash, but if you stay seated in awareness, they eventually give way to stillness. The sky clears and peace returns, not because you fought the storm, but because you allowed it to complete its course. In daily life, this means bringing mindfulness to every feeling. When irritation arises, notice it without judgment. When joy visits, welcome it without grasping. When fear surfaces, breathe with it instead of fleeing. Each emotion is a guest. Your role is not to decorate the house for them or to lock them out. It is to open the door, greet them, and let them leave when their message is delivered. The liberation that comes from this practice is profound. You begin to trust yourself. You no longer fear your own inner landscape. You see that emotions, like all phenomena, are transient expressions of life. They are not obstacles but guides. Each one invites you deeper into awareness, into compassion, into presence. And as you stop overthinking your emotions, something miraculous happens. You begin to feel life directly. You laugh without hesitation. You cry without shame. You forgive without calculation. You live not as a thinker of emotions, but as an experiencer of being. The walls that separated mind from heart begin to dissolve, and life flows through you effortlessly. The Buddha's path is not about escaping emotion, but about awakening within it. When you stop over-analyzing how you feel, you discover a stillness that holds every feeling without resistance. That stillness is your true nature, vast, luminous, and free. From that place, even the most intense emotions become waves of beauty passing through the ocean of your awareness. So whenever your mind begins to overthink, to dissect, to judge what you feel, take a breath. Return to presence. Remind yourself, this too is impermanent. This too is part of being human. Let each emotion rise and fall like music that plays and fades into silence. There's no need to cling to the melody or fear the silence. It is all part of the same song. And now, if this teaching has touched something within you, if it has reminded you that peace is found not in control, but in awareness, take a deep breath and let that truth settle in your heart. And before we continue to the final reflection and closing of this journey through Buddhist wisdom, remember to subscribe to the channel so that you can keep walking with us, learning how to live freely, feel deeply, and meet every moment with the stillness of understanding.